Well, welcome to the Digital Handshake. I'm your host, Scott Jorgensen, and we're pleased to be here tonight with Dr. Lara Devgan, plastic surgeon based in New York City. We also want to thank our sponsors, Media PSC, for helping us to bring this podcast to you this evening. Dr. Devgan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
Well, here on the Digital Handshake, we help sort of make your digital first impression your strongest asset. Kudos to you in that you've established a great practice there in New York City. But I got to imagine that you probably had visions of more than just a practice, but really establishing a brand. Can you share a little bit more with sort of our audience about how did you go about that? Because, today you have, well over 900,000 followers on Instagram. You've got a great following on YouTube. You're now producing your own podcast. So from a media and marketing standpoint, you're doing some really great things out there.
To be honest, my origin story didn't start out with digital marketing in mind. I just wanted to focus on my craft and take excellent care of my patients one step at a time. But we're living in an internet era, and I think the cell phone is the new computer, and social media and social sharing is the way that most people in the world get their information. So my motivation in starting out was really, how do I put accurate, factual information from the voice of an expert into the world? I remember I was once told that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think about this a lot with plastic surgery as it relates to, all sorts of digital media, because most of the loudest voices in plastic surgery are not board certified plastic surgeons. And I didn't come at this at all with media training or a media background. I just thought it was a shame that nobody was telling the truth online. One thing led to another, and everything kind of happened organically.
Well, I think it's interesting that sort of that phrase that you share about, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Plastic surgery is a very competitive specialty, right? And it's cash pay, it's elective. Patients are coming to you not sick, right? They're coming to you, but they're coming to you with, concerns and challenges about their own, aesthetic beauty. And, within that is, how do you stand out? I got to imagine that in the early days of you building your practice and establish your presence online, you made some mistakes. Can you share with us kind of some mistakes or pitfalls that maybe you look back on and we can kind of laugh together, but really helped kind of serve as like nice learning moments for you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think every great story has some ups and downs. And although I feel very fortunate to be doing what I love and being very busy right now, when I first started my practice, I was concerned just right from the jump that my internet connection didn't work and my phone line was down because, I started my practice and the phone just was not ringing. And I remember about a week into my very first lease that I ever signed, I called my mom in California and I was like, "Mom, can you just call me? Call me at the office. I don't think my phone is working." And she hangs up, and a second later, ring, ring. And I was like, "Oh, never mind. I fixed it." And I hung up feeling very humbled. And so I guess the lesson that I took from this is that, there can be a lot of silence and crickets in the beginning. I started my practice after my plastic and reconstructive surgery residency fellowship. And in those early years, I really focused on working as much as I could. I took call at every area hospital that would allow me to be on call. I took care of many facial fractures, trauma cases, burns, lacerations. I was driving all around downtown Connecticut, New York City. I was taking care of patients for free, indigent patients, uninsured patients, and just trying to do the work. And so I think one of my most important lessons is that, the glamorous life of a Park Avenue plastic surgeon it's not a 5-minute success story. It's a story that is decades in the making. And really that 10,000 hour rule of first gaining expertise, next staying humble, and next really taking care of individual people one at a time, because each one of those people represents the sphere of 10 people of influence around them. Those were some of my early pitfalls, driving around in the middle of the night, doing all sorts of stuff to just work as much as possible. And then, of course, having my mom check that my phone was working.
So, I did a little bit of research before we jumped on together on the podcast today. And one thing I noticed is that everything about you and your online presence is very well polished and curated. And there's a lot of intention behind your website, behind your marketing, behind the posts that you're putting out on Instagram, et cetera. Can you speak a little bit about that? Like, the amount of forethought and planning and just intention that's behind your marketing.
I love things that look beautiful. I mean, it's my profession, plastic and reconstructive surgery, and there's so much meticulousness in my work that I want the information and media that I'm putting in the world to reflect that same level of care. You know that adage that the best way to check out a restaurant is to look at its bathroom? I kind of feel a little bit like the digital media marketplace is that, but for plastic and reconstructive surgery. So if someone is taking sloppy, blurry photos and their presence online reflects messiness and disorder, that tells you a little bit about how their brain is working and what their aesthetic sensibility is. So it's very important to me whether it is an Instagram or TikTok post or a surgery, that everything has precise attention to detail, that I'm thinking it through. Even in setting up this podcast, I wanted to make sure that I was doing my very best for optimal lighting and positioning. When I was growing up, my parents used to tell me how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so I have always been someone who likes to have beautiful handwriting, keep organized, have a daily planner. And I think a little bit of that may come across.
Everything that you do, there's obviously polish and intention and, forethought into, and, you've developed such a strong following out there in, social media, and kudos to you and congratulations. That's tremendous and remarkable. I got to imagine that's a great feeder, if you will, for your practice and for, your plastic surgery business there. Many of your fellow plastic surgeons are out there trying to do, all they can to gain a following, to, get more people that are, more interested in what they're doing online and, from a digital marketing standpoint. But I think some surgeons are out there are quietly like making some mistakes and really hurting their reputation. What are you seeing out there with, fellow plastic surgeons where they're really trying to like do some kind of more gimmicky things or, things that maybe hurting their credibility?
I love to see fellow physicians and surgeons exhibiting professionalism and kind of using social media as an educational voice. And I always feel a tiny bit of regret and embarrassment when I see people who are making a spectacle of themselves.
Right.
So that would kind of be my one piece of feedback for anyone who might gain value from listening to this, that no one wants to see their doctor dancing during a surgery or live streaming a critically important part of an operation or wearing a costume or being in any way misogynistic or off color. I think some of those things don't sit quite right with me when I see them personally.
Well, another area of your marketing that I've been so impressed with that I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about is your new podcast. Now, you have several episodes up on YouTube, and I think you're covering some really great topics, especially for women. It's interesting. We're finding more and more plastic surgeons developing their own podcasts, and it's been quite successful for them, those that are making that investment and becoming more socially savvy about podcasting.
Yeah, I started the podcast in 2017 and took a brief hiatus during COVID and then restarted it again in 2021. And as the times have evolved, we've digitized it so that it's also a visual and not just an audio format. But
Right.
the origin story of my podcast, Beauty Bosses, was that I have the privilege and opportunity to meet and know and take care of so many amazing people who in many cases are leaders in their industries. And I thought it would just be a fun moment for me to engage with people in a super casual way. I started the podcast with my laptop and a $20 microphone I bought on Amazon. And we climbed to as high as number 2 in the beauty and fashion charts with like essentially a shoestring budget and nothing else. So this was kind of back when not everyone had a podcast. And over time, my free time has shrunk miraculously. But I still continue to record the podcast. I focus on talking to people who are entrepreneurs or experts in fields related to beauty, wellness, health, medicine, even things like fashion and makeup, because these are areas that I think are interesting to my audience.
As we talk about sort of your audience and sort of your experience within building a beauty brand beyond, I think a really what I call it a beauty brand beyond plastic surgery. What are some trends that you think are popular today, but as we look out into the future are going to be less so? For example, there's a lot of docs today that are doing, they're kind of these what I call ranking videos of like different types of procedures. Like they give it a 4 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, or they're doing lists of like, top 4, top 5, things like that. Is there anything that you're seeing docs doing that are kind of like, okay, yeah, it's kind of in vogue today, but I think that's going to be going away?
I don't love when medical professionals critique the appearance of public figures and speculate on what they've had done. I
Yeah.
think that is truly walking a questionable ethical line. And I see that diminishing in the future, in part because I think people will have an awakening about how this is not really the heart of the Hippocratic Oath and what we want doctors to be doing. And in part because I think it's just not savvy. I don't think it reads well to people. Anyone who is making a video critiquing a celebrity's face has never taken care of a celebrity. And so it feels like the blind leading the blind. I also think that the genre of clickbait videos is on the out and out because we are savvy consumers. Everyone has seen listicles and salacious headlines and intro one-liner openers that have no substance behind them. And I think people are looking for greater depth and breadth. So social media in some ways is just an amplifier of who you are. If you are astute, intelligent, committed, dedicated, it's going to come across in your social presence. And if you are a little bit of a clown, that is going to come across too.
Right, right. Well, I 100% agree. And let's take the flip side of that question and that, some trends that are kind of perhaps burgeoning now that you think are going to become mega trends in the future when it comes to digital marketing and social media, especially in the context of beauty and aesthetics.
I think we are moving past the era of simply a before and after photo, and plastic and reconstructive surgery, and even for my skincare company, we are emerging into beauty storytelling. So it's not the before and the after, it's the before, during, and after, and the who, what, where, why, and when, and the stages of recovery, the good, bad, and the ugly. I think that's interesting because if you think about a field like plastic surgery, every intervention and every operation has a whole thought process and an emotional backstory that inspired it to come to be. And people want to know, why are you doing that? And what motivated it? And what is it like? People want to know what it's like after the procedure. Is it uncomfortable? Are you bruised? How do you look? Are you in pain? And so this idea of the narrative arc with a million little stories, each person is a story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so interesting. And I find that compelling as a viewer as well.
Well, Dr. Devgan, I want to say thank you for joining us on the Digital Handshake tonight. And, you truly are one of the superstars of plastic surgery. You've built an amazing empire there in New York City with your podcast, your medical practice, your skincare line. I mean, a lot going on, a lot on your plate, but extremely impressive. And again, thank you so much for taking some time with us this evening and being on the podcast. And we want to thank our sponsors, Media PSC, for helping us put this podcast together and bring it to you. And all the best. Thanks again, Dr. Devgan, for being on.
Thank you so much.